Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. Go for it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the planning board of the town of East Hampton, our meeting of May 3rd. Is Mr. Parsons, Member Parsons is on his way. All right, we'll do a little stretching until he takes his seat. We have three matters on for subdivision and indoor site plan review tonight, and a couple of matters that are on for on our regular meeting for resolutions. Good evening, and we had a public hearing that was supposed to go for tonight.
Right.
That would have been on the Maidstone Acres 2 site plan. But unfortunately, the applicant didn't properly post, at least that's the information I received. So we don't have jurisdiction to have that public hearing. And instead, what we're going to do is later on during the regular meeting, and that'll be yours, read into a new resolution. And that public hearing, I think, is going to go on, assuming that we resolve on it, and assuming that they do their posting June 7th. That's when that. So with that, let's start with 395 Panago Road's preliminary. It says Chance, but I guess that's an old note.
It is still Chance, it says the applicant.
Sure. Hi.
Oh, well, you know, you're absolutely right. Okay.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Eric Chance, the Director of Housing and Community Development.
We've been waiting 5 years to say that.
As you know, with this application, at the last planning board meeting, the board deemed it complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing. You have a resolution for this evening to schedule it for June 7th. This is the EAF that we prepared for you as lead agency. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the public hearing, is it for us to schedule a public hearing?
Yes.
Because I thought there was some issue with.
Yeah, no, it is us. It's not the town
All
board.
right, not
Yeah,
the
there was some
town board.
confusion over, but this is a subdivision like any other. The planning board has jurisdiction over it. It'll go through preliminary subdivision procedure and then final subdivision. So, you know, the board is the lead agency, has already declared it. And this is the EAF we prepared for you, recommending a negative declaration.
So it's not the kind of thing where we make recommendations to the town board?
No, this is your
Our
application.
application.
Yep.
Okay, very well. Sorry to step on
No,
you.
that's quite all right.
Okay. So we need to go through. Thank you. Well, actually, what we've been trying to adopt is a more streamlined way of dealing with the EAF, I should say. And I'll ask the board, has everyone had an opportunity to look over the EAF? Yeah. And we'll note that all 11 items in the EAF have been identified by the planning department as having no or small impact. With regard to any of these items, is there any board member who wants to have a discussion about why any of these items are not a no or small impact item? Yeah. Hearing none, then we have the question, do we wish to, well, I guess, Randy, this is yours, so why don't you
Let her rip.
You want to make a resolution on negative declaration?
Yes. Do we have that? Or
No, no.
is that the next thing to write it? To have the negative neg deck written, or is it?
No, you usually just go around the board,
just
make a
make a
motion to make a negative
Just make a
declaration.
motion. for the
Okay,
neg deck.
motion for a neg deck.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of negative declaration on 395 Panago Road preliminary subdivision?
Aye.
7-0, negative declaration. Congratulations on your maiden voyage. The next item that we have is Sylvan Realty, and the applicant knows that it's on for tonight. Where the app? Oh, so you are? I'm sorry, I thought you were. Yeah, I thought you were, no, my mistake. I'm full of mistakes tonight. I thought that you were here on in an observing capacity. Yes, well, I guess consider. Okay, we have representative from the applicant, but we also have the planning department, so Tina.
Thank you, Sam. This is the Sylvan Realty Site Plan Special Permit application. The application is to change the use of and expand a non-conforming building by proposing a first floor retail space, second floor office space, second floor affordable apartments, paved parking areas, and extensive landscaping. The parcel's in the neighborhood business zone and is 100% cleared of naturally occurring vegetation. A public hearing was held on April 12th, and it was held in person on LTV broadcast. The memo posted to the website did have some errors regarding the amount of public comment provided, so I'm just going to clarify that. There were 2 emails received from the public, and 3 members of the public spoke. But 2 of the people who spoke also had sent emails. So it was really a total of 3 commenters. And all had spoken in opposition of the project. The memo wasn't that clear on that, so I just wanted to clarify. We suggest that the planning board read the letters received and rewatch the public hearing. The board will need to determine if the public's concerns have been adequately addressed. A brief summary of the public comments is included in the report, and I'll go through them quickly. Comments in opposition were regarding the overall scale of the building, potential traffic, the need for a traffic study, potential adverse impacts to the character of the neighborhood, potential uses of the basement other than mechanical space and storage. It was stated that the size and location of the buildings were inappropriate and the applicant should consider relocating it. And concerns over internal movement and circulation with specific reference to large trucks was also made. Regarding fire prevention, the fire marshal has found that there's adequate water for firefighting purposes and agreed that the property is now going to be compliant with the ADA, which is site plan in place. In conclusion, the board should discuss the public comments and determine if they feel they've been adequately addressed. Should the board find that the public's concerns have been addressed, then the application is ready to be approved. The rest of the memo just cites the most recent plans and then the conditions of approval. Most of them are typical ARB approval, Suffolk County Health Department, Suffolk County Department of Public Works. And then the last is with respect to the accessory apartments needing to comply with town code, be registered with the Office of Housing, and that this should be a condition prior to the granting of the certificate of occupancy. I'm going to put up the plan now. So that concludes that wrap-up memo.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we saw this application through many iterations, and I do believe that we got to a place that we were comfortable with. And, just to kind of go through some of the things that the public said, some of the mass of the building was because we asked for those 2 apartments. And I think, there was some question as to whether the affordable apartments would actually be affordable apartments. But, I think through the planning process, they will be watched, and that's how they'll have to be. They have to be affordable apartments. The circulation, I do believe it's probably in the best place to get the parking that they needed for all of that circulation. So I think we did address that pretty well. And, the setbacks were relieved by the zoning. So, I know they're keeping it where it was, but they did get the zoning board to get the relief on those setbacks. And, we did look at the possibility of the traffic, but we talked about where the entrance and exit would be in order to try to avoid some of the streets that we thought would impact that traffic. So overall, I do think we addressed the issues.
Okay, anybody else say anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's not ready for approval. I think this is a unique application, unique that it's gone simultaneously through 3 boards. I know that the zoning board granted 2 variances. But I'll get back to the zoning board in a minute, but I think there's still some other items that we need to resolve. And, you know, when it first came in front of us, I'll admit that I was happy to see this improvement happen to this site, because I, as a lot of other people, didn't think that what was there was very attractive and very shabby. So this was definitely, but as we've gone through our meetings, and I've watched the zoning board meetings and as well as the ARB meetings, and I learned a lot from the ARB meetings. Also, I've learned a lot from the public comments. I know a lot of people criticize the public comment process that we have. It sort of, they say it comes at the end of an already completed and made up our mind type of situation. But in this case, I think they brought up a lot of issues that sort of made me rethink my feelings about it. One of them is the traffic study, and tying that in with the consultant that we hired, who says that that we hired to do the corridor study, specifically says that this is something that we should look at within that context. And that hasn't been done yet. So I think we need to do that before we move forward with it. The character of the neighborhood is something that I wasn't aware of in the beginning. I wasn't that familiar with the neighborhood. But listening to the neighbors and the public comments, excuse me, I see that that's a bigger issue than I first thought. And the scale of the building has a lot to do with that. And regarding the scale, and this was a zoning board issue, but I think it's important that we bring it up here because it follows with my contention that we're not ready to move on with this application. There was a question that was brought up at the zoning board meetings, I think one of the first ones, where they were worried that the building, the existing building, wasn't strong enough to withstand a second floor. And that if they end up tearing down most of the walls of the existing building because they're just too old and not firm enough, it wouldn't be a reconstruction, it would be a complete new construction, which would mean that they would have to adhere to the existing setbacks and everything else. Now, Rick, the last time we met or at the public hearing, indicated that with regard to that question, they had gotten an engineering report from Maresca and Associates affirming that the existing building and foundation is adequate to withstand the second floor. So I looked at a copy of the letter from Maresca, and it says that the foundation is firm enough and adequate to be able to be in good condition to take on a second floor. However, it makes no mention of the existing first floor and the walls. So it's possible, and we don't have any engineering report that would attest anything different, that they could, as it was mentioned at the zoning board, that 90% of those walls could end up in the dumpster and they could build a whole new building. And in that case, it wouldn't be what they're purporting this to be, a reconstruction. So anyway, I think these are open issues that really are important, very serious issues that need to be explored at the very least. I would also recommend that we write a letter to the zoning board, if that's the process that everybody agrees is the right way to go, to have them take a look again at that particular issue as to whether or not this is a reconstruction or a complete new structure. Let me see, I think that's all I have to say. I think, you know, as far as the affordable apartments, there was some question as to who requested that. I don't think we ever insisted that they have affordable apartments. What we said was that we were happy to see the affordable apartments. And I don't think the affordable apartments is what's creating the scale and mass. I mean, it's contributing, but that's not the main factor, is what's creating the mass and scale of the building. So I think the neighbors are, I think we should listen to the neighbors' concerns about the mass and scale and what it does to the character of the neighborhood. I think a traffic study is important. I think we should consider this within the context of the corridor study. And I think that the zoning board should have another look at this with regard to determining whether or not this is a reconstruction or a new construction. I think that one is a really important issue. And, you know, maybe that's the way to go, or maybe there's another way to take a look at it, but, you know, I'll open that up for discussion. But those are my main points.
Since
It
we
doesn't
have,
go back to the zoning board, does it? I mean, I don't think this doesn't go back to the zoning board.
Well, just remember that at the time it was Nancy Lynn Thiel, who was the attorney for the zoning board. And she did say specifically that what they were looking at, because again, this was a unique situation. Usually the zoning board gets an application after it's been approved by the planning.
No, I know.
In this case, it was still open, in the open. And she did say that what you're adjudicating tonight, what you're deciding on tonight, is not the final plan. And if anything changes, it should come back to you for another review. I mean, she did say that back then. So I think things have changed.
Yeah,
And
that's not usually the way the zoning board works.
I think once they get a variance.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the thing.
having been on the zoning board, I don't remember anything
no
coming
one
back
is
like
denying
that.
that once they got those variances, that's going to change. Those variances are those variances. But there's this other issue that they wouldn't have been able to, if things changed and they made a decision based on one set of plans and one set of assumptions, and those have changed. I think it's only right that.
But what changed?
What's changed, yeah.
Respect is it going to change?
What changed is whether or not this is a reconstruction or not. And it was uncertain back then whether it was.
I don't think that's.
Well, there's plans, I mean, the planning department could correct me if I'm wrong, but the plans indicate that enough is saved to consider it proper, right?
I don't believe that has changed. That is,
So, I mean, the building, if they get building permits, if they get approval, if they were to get building permits, those plans the zoning board has, that we have, should match. And I don't know the exact rules of how much of the foundation or first floor needs to be conserved, but presumably.
Well, what if they tear it all down?
They wouldn't have,
Get a
the
stop
building
order.
department shouldn't give that permit to do that, and they'd be outside of their approvals. Because we're not saying they can do that.
What
Yeah.
I had hoped to get a copy of the zoning board decision, but what variances did they actually?
They got the parking,
setback.
they applied for 3 variances, the parking, the setback for the apartments, and the setback for the deck that it was adjacent to the apartments.
So just
They approved the 2 of them, the parking and the apartment
Yeah.
setback.
yeah, I have it.
Yeah, it's, yeah, 3
Okay,
variances.
thank you.
Yeah.
Because I have a similar concern to Lou's, which is, and it did come up at the hearing, and I thought it was very good comments about, the pre-existing, it's a pre-existing non-conforming building. And I took a look at the code again to refresh my memory. And again, I don't think they got a variance. Let me just read you very shortly. A non-conforming building or structure, we know this, we all accept this is a non-conforming building. Then there's something, a substantial expansion of a structure shall be deemed to occur in the following circumstances. Gross floor area upon making an addition to the structure, which increases its gross floor area by 50% or more over the gross floor area which the structure had on the date it first became subject to provisions of this chapter. In other words, when it became non-conforming. Is this project increasing the gross floor area by 50% or more? Value, this is the definition of a substantial expansion. Value, upon making an addition to the structure or undertaking a reconstruction, rehabilitation, or other improvement of the structure, the cost of which equals or exceeds 50% of the market value of the structure prior to making or undertaking the addition, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or other improvement. For the purposes of this provision, if the addition, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or other improvement is made following damage to the structure, that's not what we're dealing with here. So I think it's clear that that this is a substantial expansion.
How do you know that it's clear?
Well, because it's more than
But to be honest with you,
50%.
I'm not even sure that's disputed. I mean, this has been seen as a positive change in use. And so there's always been this thing of, okay, it's a bigger building, don't love it, but we don't want a nightclub. Because they already have some approval, we're looking at the current situation, and is this better? So I don't think that those facts are disputed. I don't think we're saying.
Well,
just
These are not even in our jurisdiction. I mean, the definition of this
Well,
interpreting
this is
this
in the code.
definition.
This is in the code.
But it's a building department issue.
Well, wait, let me finish. First of all, we're not talking about a pre-existing non-conforming use. That's a different subject. We're talking about a pre-existing non-conforming building, which this is. And this, in my view, if you don't think this is a substantial expansion.
I'm not saying, well, I'll let you finish, but I'm not saying.
I think we have to determine, is this a substantial expansion?
And if we determine that it is, what does that mean to you?
Then,
Can't grant approval?
no, then it goes to section 255-142, non-conforming buildings and structures. The following provisions shall apply to and govern all non-conforming buildings and structures as the same are defined. Expansion of non-conforming structures. A non-conforming building or structure lawfully existing on any lot or a building or structure which lawfully exists on a non-conforming lot may be enlarged, reconstructed, altered, restored, or repaired in whole or part, provided that the degree of nonconformity is not thereby increased.
Which parts are increased, are you saying?
The gross floor area is increased, the value of the building
But
is.
is the gross floor area increased beyond what they're allowed?
No,
Beyond
but it's
50%.
beyond what they have.
Yeah, but they're allowed 50% expansion.
There are the criteria. There's 50% of gross floor area, that's one, and 50% of the value of the building. That's what's the evidence of those?
Well, I'm saying, do you know that it's not occurring? I don't.
Well, to Ed's
Can we
point,
ask the
is that
planning
for
department?
us?
The building department determine? Well, no, I think we might be missing, I could be totally wrong here. But what parts of this current plan are non-conforming? I think it's parking setbacks.
So increasing the nonconformity would include increasing gross floor area within setback areas. So say they're adding a second floor in an area that's in a
They got
setback.
variance for that.
Exactly. They didn't get the variance, I don't think, for the gross floor area. They got it for the dimensions.
Yeah, I don't
They
think
didn't
They
need
got a
it, but they
setback
didn't need it.
variance for the apartments, that's it.
They didn't
And they got
get,
and they got a variance for the parking, that's it. They didn't get a variance for anything else.
this section, it may be that they needed a variance from this section about a substantial expansion of a
What are we
non-conforming
saying?
building.
Are we saying?
No,
Are we
no,
saying?
no. So I do have a hard time
No.
thinking that this wasn't reviewed during the planning process. I don't have the background on this application, but I'm pretty confident that Eric would
I
have.
think Eric
No,
would have
you know,
suggested
I
a
have to
variance if it
differ.
needed a gross.
Listen, Eric said that the Wayne-Scott Commercial Center did not need a special permit. The zoning board ruled against it. Eric's a great guy. I think he's terrific. He's the housing director. I couldn't be more pleased. But let's not, the planning department is not given the jurisdiction to interpret the code. That's just,
Who
No, what I'm
who
saying-
has the jurisdiction to decide that 50% question? That's my
I
question.
would say the building inspector or the zoning board.
Well, but do we? And if we don't have the jurisdiction to make that determination, then how is it a planning issue that
Well,
we
I think
should
it's pretty
approve
clear
or
on
not?
its face.
You're telling me that the valuation of the building is clear on its face? I can tell you that.
But you have to, Liz,
I can't I can't imagine going into court and saying, well, it's on its face, without an appraisal, without
Well,
some
so why don't,
independent evidence to show.
But you know,
that
I don't think we
its
should argue
value
about
has
this. I
gone
don't
up.
think it's probably disputed. I don't think that's a disputed fact. I think, I would doubt, I would,
Randy's saying it is.
well, I'm saying, I don't think people, I don't disagree with
what's your
Randy.
basis? What's your proof? that it's
I don't
not?
have any.
No,
one way or
Randy,
the other.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying it very well could be. But you're allowed to expand, if you have a site plan, you are allowed to make that building worth more than 50%, unless you're increasing some kind of non-conforming without the variances and approvals. And what I'm saying is, I don't know what those things are. They're substandard parking and setbacks, and I think that they got variances for that. So the building did get bigger, it's probably worth more, but I'm saying, how does that make it non-code compliant?
Because there's a requirement in here that you can only expand a pre-existing non-conforming building if it does not increase the degree of the non-conformity.
But we
And
don't know.
what degree of non-conformity is increased?
Well, you've got increase in gross floor area.
Is that definitely non-conforming on that site?
Well, it's non-conforming because it's in the setback.
But they
They
got
got a
variances,
variance for that.
Well,
so that makes it conforming.
I don't agree. I think you're saying that a yard setback is the same as a variance for a expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming
No, I'm
structure, and
saying-
it's not.
I'm saying,
Not the same thing.
what makes this less conforming outside of what they've got variances for? And there very well could be something. I don't know what it is.
I would say the gross floor area and the value.
I know, but Randy,
Can I ask a
But
question?
we didn't.
Yeah,
If, just
And I'm not just-
hypothetically, which,
Right.
in a hypothetical situation, which refers to this, if there's a pre-existing non-conforming structure,
right.
which doesn't meet current setbacks and so forth, pre-existing non-conforming, and they tear that structure down, it comes down, and they build another one within the same setbacks that the old pre-existing non-conforming structure had, would that be allowed?
If it doesn't
Absolutely not,
increase.
because
the-
that would be considered
but we're not
a
approving
replacement
that.
of a substantial amount of the bill. That's what's happening.
But that's not the application, Lou. It might be a theory
but
that they're
there's-
gonna do that,
But
but that's not
they'll,
what they're applying for.
and
That's
they'll
not
get a
what we
stop
approve.
order. I mean, they'll get stopped if that's what they're gonna do, because
So
that's
you're
not what we're
saying- So
approving.
you're saying if 90, as the zoning board feared, if, in their words, if 90% of those walls end up in the dumpster, the building department will notice that and put a stop order, and then
These
what?
things get
It's all,
stopped.
it's all up to the building department
But that
one way or the
doesn't,
other.
yeah, I mean, we can't speculate on that. We don't even know if that's gonna happen. I mean,
mean,
how
if
can
we-
we vote on something just speculating that this is what's gonna happen?
Because we were reviewing the sturdiness or the
Right.
integrity of those walls. They affirmed, they had an engineering firm affirm that the foundation is firm. Well, they said nothing about the walls, which indicates that maybe, possibly indicates that the walls are not.
Yeah, but are you sure that that doesn't meet the standard of
So, I mean, I would like to suggest, it seems that there's a lot of divergence. I do think it would make sense to send a request to the building department for an interpretation,
Whether there's substantial improvement.
whether this is considered a substantial expansion. I mean, again, I'm going to say I can't imagine that we didn't look at this, and I'm confident that it was considered, but I don't have personal knowledge of that right now to suss out the numbers.
Could we also include in that request that when they look at it, when they examine it, that they look at the potential for the possibility that those walls are not going to be able to withstand the
Is
second
that something
floor?
Well,
the building
and that the walls
department
can't be thrown out, because I'm not sure that's a fact.
They did it with the foundation. Why can't we get an
Because
engineer?
because maybe all they need is the foundation. I don't know
But
the
if all they
answer.
need is the foundation, then it's a complete reconstruction.
Well, maybe not by the code language.
does?
If you tear down a building and just have the
It
foundation,
depends on
that's
what the
not.
code says. What do we do?
I don't know what the.
That's a substantial.
And I
come on.
do, the code rules actually differ when it's a reconstruction as opposed to a new construction.
They're coming
So-
here for they're not saying they're building a new building.
Right, they're asking for a reconstruction, right?
So if to the extent that they're asking for a reconstruction, then it's gonna be judged by the building department under those standards of
Right.
reconstruction, not under the standards of new construction. I'm certainly not gonna pretend that I know whether or not a building, putting up X% of new walls suddenly changes it from from reconstruction to new construction. I think it's fine if the planning department's suggestion is that since there's a question about whether there's substantial improvement, that, and I don't think it's in our purview to make that determination. Certainly, I don't think we have the evidence necessarily to make that determination. We can speculate all we want, but.
So let's clear it up.
Let's
clear it up.
send it over to the planning department, the building department. Let's get a determination whether it's a substantial improvement.
Substantial expansion.
Well, I keep skipping the word.
I think we have
Expansion or improvement?
Know that they do have structural engineers who could do that. I could ask the
But
question.
we asked and
Well,
got
within the-
engineering report.
Can I just-
Right.
Why can't we?
From the
get it?
applicant, right? Or from the.
But that was
building-
from the
We asked for it, and they provided.
From
it.
the, I'm sorry, from the applicant or from the
Yeah,
building department?
Yes,
Okay,
so
yeah,
why can't we ask for the same thing for the walls?
from the applicant.
Let's see if it's even a fact.
That's the thing, yeah, guys,
I don't know if
I don't, I might be totally wrong here, but I believe the questions are, what is required to be considered a rebuild? And whether that's just the foundation, which it very well could be, or you have to keep some percentage of walls, which it might be, I have no idea. But there's no sense in asking for a wall engineering report if it doesn't matter. And it's not up to us to decide whether it
If
matters.
You could put the words if it matters.
Well,
Yeah, I think you would- I understand what you're saying.
The planning department could probably get us that information without asking.
Yeah, you understand what the remit is.
I believe, I think it is.
If the code is unclear, then we should ask the building department.
Yes.
But the code very well could be clear and we just don't know what it says in detail. And then I think
Well, let me finish too, because this isn't just a red herring. It goes to the public hearing. The public hearing objections, which I thought, I agree with Lou, there were good points made. Go to this question, is this a substantial expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming building? And it goes to the whole questions about mass and scale and parking, because if they have to build the building they want and meet the setbacks, they're not going to be able to have as much parking. I have felt all along that this building was too big and that we didn't need to, go with variances and all, that there's enough, I'm just going to say there's a certain point at which an investor and a property owner and a business says, that's too expensive, I'm not going to make any money. And I don't think we're there. I think that we can ask for a building that this community likes better, and they'll still be interested in building it.
maybe Randy, you always have good points and a fairly consistent, throughout this application. You've been pretty consistent about it. But what I'm saying is, I think we have to make sure that there's some non-conforming that's increased that hasn't received a variance, because I don't know if there's really a problem there. There very well could be. I don't know the rules.
I don't know
But
what
think
it says.
We're putting the cart in front of the horse if we ask about the value of this. If it doesn't in fact trigger something, that it would make that matter.
I'm wondering about didn't the ZBA make a determination on the parking?
They did.
They gave them a
Yes,
variance.
they did.
Yeah,
So
but this
is it for us
says,
to revisit that.
this says within,
We're not revisiting the parking.
Well, Randy was
Well, I have a,
he was tying his objections
it's
to the
possible,
parking.
it's possible that the coverage and gross floor area is, not actually it's because of the parking that it would become a problem. I don't know the details, but I'm saying that we should,
Setbacks.
they definitely got a variance for that.
They got a
Variance
variance for
for the
the
setbacks.
apartments. They didn't need a variance for the setbacks because it's pre-existing non-conforming. They're adding the apartments and that required a variance.
they didn't give them a variance
They're
from
apartments.
the substantial expansion section.
But that's not.
Because maybe they didn't need it.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe
That's
it's
not-
not
No,
good
they're just
enough.
saying-
Right.
Well,
Well,
I
that's not
I
good
just think that
ZBA's
it got scrutinized by the.
It seems like a pause is a good idea. I'm only suggesting that we make sure we have the order of operations correctly. And I think the planning department could help to make sure that,
We'll put together the right letter to the.
that it matters if it's more than 50% or whatever, and that it matters whether they save the walls, because if it doesn't, we have nothing to ask Ann.
Well, the question is about the walls is within the context of what they're doing, of the reconstruction application. Because if it's, the building department will be able to make a determination for a decision for us as to whether or not, within the context of a reconstruction of the building, there's a percentage of the walls that will have to remain, and that if they don't, then then it's no longer the application that they made. And that is the concern, I think, that we have to, as a planning board, be concerned with, is that what comes before us is reflected in what comes out of us. So that's hopefully articulating the concern.
There are several good points. Lou had other issues which we haven't discussed, but
Well,
Yeah.
if the building department says basically this, and I'm gonna be not technically accurate. If the foundation works and the building works, if the foundation is good and the building is good, then that's the end of the conversation.
I don't think so. I think
But
we're
that's the
asking,
building department's call, not ours.
well, but we're asking, was a variance from 255, 142, expansion of non-conforming structures necessary to do what they're doing? Because they
Well,
didn't
how
get
is-
it.
but
They
how-
didn't get one.
How
And
is,
it goes to the question of mass and scale and it goes to everything. All of the objections we got. If they have to build a conforming building, then we're getting less wastewater, we're getting more setback, more neighborhood, friendliness. We're getting a lot of what we want if they have to obey the current setbacks.
I think we do need the building department to weigh in. I don't believe that the ZBA even can issue a variance to the substantial, it's a.
no,
prohibition.
I agree with that.
So I
It's a
think,
building
For
department
use.
call.
The standard for a use variance is much tougher than an area variance.
Let the
So,
Let the
but
building
you go ahead,
department
Tina.
know.
yeah, I think we
When
need,
we present the letter to the building department, we'll include the ZBA's determination. So that
Yes.
they can, so that their determination can conform to the ZBA's determination. They have a lane that they have to operate with. So,
okay.
all right, so. Thank you very much for that suggestion.
Thanks, Lou.
Allows
Thanks,
us
Lou.
to go on to the next item. Which is 219, 221 Pantago Road. You're recused on this. Okay, don't go too far because we do have 2 items to vote on. And I think, are any of them yours? No, you might want to. We have Is the applicant here? Oh, you're here on 219, very well. 19,
Okay. This is the 219, 221 Hansco Road. It's a site plan special permit application to facilitate several site improvements and a lot merger at 219, 221 Hansco Road. The project involves the demolition of an existing structure at 219 Hansco Road, followed by construction of a new two-story structure with a basement, a first floor staff break room, new back of house office space and baking kitchen, and a second floor 3-bedroom apartment to provide staff housing. The proposed building addition would be approximately 25 foot high. It's located in the neighborhood business zone. Demolition of an existing shed is also proposed. With respect to SECRA, the project is an unlisted action, and an environmental assessment form, part 1, has been submitted and reviewed by the planning board. The planning board declared lead agency on March 1st, 2023. If the board finds the application complete today, we have prepared a SECRA part 2 and negative declaration for consideration. So regarding the issues for discussion, there has been a change in the project scope since the last time the board reviewed the application. The applicant has offered to reduce the permitted restaurant seat capacity by 6 seats. This was done primarily to provide the sanitary capacity required for the affordable apartment in a manner that will not exacerbate the existing exceedance of sanitary density that's currently permissible on the site based on the Suffolk County Department of Health Services regulations. Right, so the restaurant is grandfathered at a flow which significantly exceeds the present standards. Seating the 6 seats also provides a reduction in the parking requirements on site by 2 spaces. So now I'm going to go through at the last meeting of the planning board issued several comments to the applicants. I'm going to go through those comments and explain how they have been addressed in the most recent submission. So at the last meeting, we asked that the applicant coordinate with the fire marshal regarding the improvement of the apartment. The fire marshal has signed off on the site plan, indicating that no more information is necessary regarding that. I do not believe that they have signed up on the apartment yet. That's going to occur later in the process, but their approval is required before construction of the apartment can be approved. So we recommend that should the planning board decide to approve the application, a condition of the building permit should be that the fire marshal has signed off on the apartment plans. The planning board had wanted to seek input from the Office of Housing and Community Development regarding locating the parking space for the residents off-site. The applicant has instead said that they would put the resident parking on site, so that coordination didn't happen. It's not necessary any longer. Regarding signage, there's parking, no parking signage in the back of the lots where there's a right-of-way easement that butts the East Hampton healthcare facility. We had asked that conflicting signage be removed behind the property. It still remains. I walked by the other day and I took a picture. That's in the memo. And regarding the driveway access with abutting neighbors, that issue was deemed acceptable at the meeting, so there's no further discussion there. The big comment that was really made at the February 1st meeting was that the applicant needed to resolve the sanitary allowable flow density with Suffolk County Health Department because it really spoke to the feasibility of what they were proposing. And that's what resulted in the project change I touched on earlier. The applicant's revision to the plans has brought the proposed flow below what's permitted by Suffolk County Health Department. So the transfer of flow rights pursuant to the town's affordable housing program is no longer required. Planning department found that this is a acceptable resolution to the issue that they faced because sanitary flow is reduced, but at the same time, the affordable housing is provided. Then with respect to lighting, we had asked for a revised lighting plan because the old one exceeded several standards. Oh, and I have the sanitary plan up here. I don't know if we'll look at that more when the discussion starts, perhaps. I don't know if anyone wants to look at it now. I think we can look at it later. Regarding the lighting, the revised lighting plan is generally consistent with all the planning board's lighting guidelines. with the exception of fixture height. So the applicant is requesting to provide visual consistency for all the buildings on site. And I'm going to show you, here, if you guys can see this rendering, make it a little bigger. This is the new building rendering, right? What it would look like. And that's compared to the proposed much shorter structure. The applicant is proposing to light the new building in a consistent way that the existing restaurant is lit. So you can see the fixtures hung there. They are in excess of what the planning board policy includes. However, the light output does not violate any of the standards. And you can see here that this example shows what the existing lighting looks like. It's not really like at night, so it's hard to tell, but it does look very dim. So we.
Tina, I'm sorry.
Yes, sure.
I'm not seeing where the height. Where is the nonconformity here that we're supposed to be looking at?
So this is the existing light. So the planning board policy doesn't allow the fixtures to be hung higher than 12 feet.
I see.
And this, I think, is like, I don't know, 25 or something. And then the new proposal proposes to put them 30 feet above grade on the western property line and 23 feet above grade on the new building. So while that's not consistent with the planning board guidelines, it's also, based on these renderings and the light output, not completely inconsistent, but it's to the board. This is a very kind of public property. Yes.
What's the reason that they want those higher elevations on the lights?
For consistency in the, facade of the building, like to kind of be one cohesive architectural experience. So I think it's generally compliant. We put it to the board for the board's decision. And the revised landscaping plan we find acceptable. So the other thing to note is that the applicant has submitted their variances application to ZBA. These renderings here were submitted in support of that. They do need a sizable pyramid variance and western lot line setback variance to allow new building area in the setback. So to conclude my comments, the revisions to the project scope is a positive change, allowing the affordable housing to be constructed within existing allowable sanitary flow rates. Pending confirmation of the board's consensus on lighting, we recommend that the application is complete and ready to be scheduled for a hearing once ZBA has issued their determination. And if the board agrees it's complete, the seeker is ready for review and consideration.
They've achieved this by reducing the seating capacity by 6 seats.
Yes.
Is the pyramid the only variance?
There's 3 variances required. One is the pyramid. The other is for a 3-bedroom apartment where only 2 is allowed by code. The third is to allow additional, the lot line setback, additional building area in that lot line setback associated with the affordable housing.
Got it.
Nope. The applicant wish to be heard. Your name and address.
Alex Cooley, 22 Grove Street, New York, New York. I'm the architect and applicant for the project. Just a couple quick things. We are taking down the signs. We were closed for a while for a staff break, and then the person supposed to take down the no parking signs got COVID, but we've been assured they will be taken down tomorrow. So we hope that is settled. The lighting, we're flexible on this. If it becomes an issue for the board, we're willing to work on an alternative solution, but our hope is that in the same manner in which the 2 existing buildings have a very dim light that washes light onto the facade of the building at the top of the pediment, we'd like to make, as Tina said, a consistent aesthetic here and provide the same lighting strategy on the new building. So it would be somewhere around 20 to 22 feet above grade, so it's higher than permissible, but that was our intention there. And we hope that the sewer issue has been resolved. When we were here before you the last time, there was a question as to whether we would need credits from the town for the affordable housing or a variance from Suffolk County, and it became clear to us that it would be easier if we would just eliminate some of the seats, which obviously is not beneficial to the value of the building or their the way that they operate, but it is beneficial in that it allows us to stay below the current existing flow and lock in the 225 gallons per day that we need for the affordable housing. So although we're adding flow for the affordable housing, any other developer, as we discussed last time, could add up to 300 gallons. So thank you.
Thank you. Randy, this one's yours.
Yeah. I think first of all, I think Tina did a great job. I really like the way you did on the, kind of call and response. Both on this one, where you put down a planning board comment and then you write the response. I think that's really helpful. We're really lucky to have you. And
Don't go anywhere.
It's like really,
Just saying that because I'm the only option you have.
yeah, we lucked out. We really did. Okay, aside from that, I'll just sort of wing it because I really want to hear what everybody thinks. I still find that third building a little bit of sticking out. And I'm wondering, I've talked to the architect about this, but we're talking here about a 3-bedroom apartment that is really for staff housing. This isn't going to house a cop or a teacher. This is for that business. This is housing for the people that work in that business. And a 3-bedroom, I think we're providing one parking space for a 3-bedroom apartment, which to me sounds, really? Everybody else is going to bicycle around or what? So I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with the 3rd bedroom. I understand they probably need 3 staff housing, but I think it does, there's a fair amount of variances here. We got a pyramid variance. We've got a building that really, when you look at the scale of that section, this is, so that's how I feel. That's just a gut reaction. But I think it's an improved, I really think their move to take away the 6 seats is very smart and good thing to do. Improved it very much. Less parking, less wastewater.
It's supportive of the sanitary reduction. I mean, if they get to that end, then taking out the 6 seats is.
Yeah, and no transfer of sewage credits. It's really the way to go.
It supports the zoning. How do we go around on this one?
Yeah, a step in the right direction. Thank you very much. The reduction of the number of seats was, as other people have said, key. I think that really solves a lot of problems. The fewest nonconformities we have to deal with here, the better. The lighting thing, I would love to see it come into compliance. I understand where you're going aesthetically, but I'd love to see that kind of remedied. I think we're also selling this to the public, and frankly, I think the fewest number of things that we've got to make exceptions for, the better, for sure. I totally sympathize with trying to run a business in East Hampton, and I totally understand that, particularly for a use like this, there are not that many options for where you can locate. Quite frankly, there are sanitary issues in the village. There are a limited number of commercial spaces for wet use like this along the highway. It's very complicated. And you never want to make a decision where, well, it's better than the alternative, but I think somebody else buying this, this site would be far worse. They'd have their own sanitary requirements, their own parking requirements. It would really be kind of a nightmare. So again, this is not it's a better case than that kind of situation, but in reality, with rubber meets the road, it works, I, for one, I know that many people kind of minimize this idea about, one affordable housing unit, particularly if it's staff housing. I think every unit helps, right? The business is there, it's thriving. People like this. operation. And I think being able to house the staff is important. It's key. I think you're making a good move there on that. The sticking point is in this area is parking. It's really frustrating. I went, back by here again today just to take another look at it. It's so complicated, right? That whole front parking area, it's like, do I go in here? Do I not go in here? What happens if another car? It's really bad news. The back kind of works. And I was trying to imagine if there was another use in that, where the third building is meant to go, it'd be like, what? It would really be great if everyone in this neighborhood cooperated on parking, because there's plenty of parking behind in the professional center. There's plenty of parking right next door where the hedge fund is. There's a lot of parking there, but obviously we can't make that happen. So I don't know how we get any better at doing the parking thing here. I really don't, but I am generally supportive. I think that you have come a long way since we first started, and I really appreciate the reducing the whole complication of the sanitary flow piece.
Yeah. First of all, before I give my comments, I just want to say that, we're a community, and the community consists of businesses like Carissa, which I love Carissa. I go there myself. I'm very happy that it's in East Hampton. And we're a community of, other people, residents, citizens, and so forth. And when a business like this comes in front of the planning board or the zoning board, and they request certain relaxations, setbacks, variances, and so forth, we I think we go out of our way to accommodate it as best we can within the code. And sometimes I think, we shirk our responsibility for the entire community because we try to make it work for the business person who's in front of us. And we forget about the other responsibility that we have to the community. So this is an example of something like that. The applicant's interest is their own individual interest. They want to make this work and get as much maximization out of that property as they can. And that's what they're trying to do here. And I don't blame them for that, with all due respect. I think, it's admirable that they're trying to make the business work. So I don't begrudge that at all. But I think my responsibility and the responsibility of this board is we have a fiduciary responsibility to the entire community. And when we allow these variances and these relaxations of setbacks or pyramid laws and everything else, flow rates, I think what we do is we do an injustice to the community, because we're trying to bend over backwards to make it work for the self-interest of the business. And I think we overlook the overall interest of the community. So in this case, I think the parking is woefully inadequate. As I mentioned the last time, and I know this is not something that we have the authority to enforce because they're under the grandfathered amount of about 796 gallons per day. By getting rid of those 6 seats, they're in compliance. But it's a grandfathered thing. It's the actual allowable flow for that property, as I mentioned the last time, is 225 gallons per day. There's a reason why that number is in place. So I guess my ultimate comment is that I think we should stand firm, because here you're allowing more density, you're creating a second floor. I know it's for staff housing, but if we want to keep the community bucolic and rural and not overly developed and with the kind of intensity that we're seeing, we've got to put our foot down on some of these applications. And if it hurts the applicant, I'm sorry, but I'd rather do that. I'd rather slice off a little bit of the self-interest of the applicant in order for the entire community to maintain its character of life. So anyway, those are my points.
Let me ask you a question. If the grandfathering is permitted by the zoning code,
The health
then, I'm sorry?
sanitary code.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm saying, if the grandfathering, if there's nothing, if we're not relaxing any law, and we're frankly complying with the law by the grandfathering, then how are we doing damage to that law?
Let me answer this way. My view is this: we can't use that as a regulation that we can deny the application for because they're in compliance with the grandfather. What I'm saying is, let me give you a different example to make my point. We had an application in front of us that was in an HPOD area. And they came in with an application to build 2 stories, build condos, spas, restaurants, and so forth. What's there now is a marina with a restaurant. The clearance regulation on that HPOD property is 15%. They're almost 100% clear, but they're grandfathered with that amount. Now, the reason that there's a 15% clearance maximum on an HPOD property is a really good reason. It's to prevent pollution of the lake or the body of water. So my point, my feeling is you're asking for all these other things, this expansion. And I'm saying, no, you're not getting it because
Your grandfather somewhere
your
else.
grandfather somewhere else. Yes, your grandfather and you're allowed that, but I'm not gonna let you, if I can deny your application for other reasons, and I don't even know if this is legally,
Yeah, that's what I worry about.
but I am legally entitled as a planning board to deny you the application and not give you the allowance that you're looking for in these other areas, because in total, so in short, if you're asking for expansion and you're grandfathered in some way for something, I'm not going to grant that expansion. I'm not.
Well, thank you. That's a clarity to how you're approaching these things. I don't know if that's legally tenable or not. I'm not going to make any.
I don't think it's legally tenable if you make it a quid pro quo.
Certainly
But
sounds
I
like
think
it.
if you look at the entire application and you deny it for the right reasons, not for the
If
grandfather.
you look at the site plan and special permit standards,
Yeah.
we're supposed to look at water pollution as one of the criteria that we have to find doesn't contribute to groundwater pollution. That's in the code, our code.
I didn't mean to go on that
Yeah.
diversion.
Lou, you're a tough act to follow. So the new structure is on an old structure, right? So it's kind of just like demolished.
They're just going up.
It's kind of just, yeah, they're just going up. So kind of, there's already something built there already.
There's an existing building they're gonna remove and then go up with it.
Okay,
It looks kind of like that one, Michael, the one in
Right.
between.
right.
Yeah, right now,
Yeah. It's going to
I
grow.
like,
that's what it looks like right now, like that.
I like all these changes in this plan. I like so much of this. It said though, the parking is still an issue. And I hope you continue to work with your neighbors best you can, because people are gonna park, if you have 100 no parking signs, they're still gonna park there. It doesn't mean anything. And I imagine you even get that, or historically you've had that people just park. They're gonna park wherever they can. They're gonna park in the medical parking. They're gonna walk over or walk, they're gonna find a place to park. So continue, push as hard as you can with your neighbors to get as many parking spaces as you can.
Are you guys aware
But
that
I like this plan. I like these changes are in the right direction.
How do you feel about, I should have asked that in Lou also, how do you feel about the lighting? The requests on the lighting?
I'm okay with that because it faces Montauk Highway. It's on the highway and there's just so much traffic there. There's so much light from the cars.
And it's pretty dim.
And I just wonder, is it gonna be, are the lights gonna be on all night long? Okay, good.
What about signage? Are you planning on putting a sign below the light?
And it's a very, I had said I'd like to see it come into compliance.
So you don't want them at 23 feet?
Yeah. I could be convinced otherwise, but my initial reaction was, let's make the fewest possible exceptions.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
let's just, whether I agree aesthetically or not is another matter.
I like that, what they have now. It's kind of this washed out, there,
That's what they have.
there are many egregious infractions in this town where they have lights on all night long and they're very bright. This is a muted, and it's not going to, you say it won't be on all night long.
But
No, it's pretty dark when you pass it.
you're lighting the upstairs apartment. These lights are lighting the restaurant, the bakery. What that light does up top, it lights, it puts a light into the apartment.
Not into the apartment.
No,
I
there's a
can
wall.
see it right there.
No, there's a
I don't
wall
think the
there. It's gonna
apartment
light,
would
it's
like
going to light.
I wouldn't.
We don't want to blind our.
It's going, but it's going to light a white wall, right? I mean,
It's a very subtle wash on the wall.
On the facade facing the highway.
let me just ask Lou, how are you with the lighting?
Actually, I'm okay with the way they are.
Yeah, with the applicant?
The lighting got
All right.
You see the lighting on? Okay.
Okay. I take a little bit of issue that we're bending backwards on some of these applications. I really don't think we do. I mean, I think we look at these applications and, we take into consideration what's good for this town. And I agree, I think it's really hard to see a lot of expansion, but at the same time, we have a housing crisis. We do. And so if this is a good spot to put an apartment, I'm all for it. We have situations where we can't get doctor's appointments for 6 to 8 months because they don't have staff. I mean, we're kind of in a crisis out here. People cannot live out here anymore. And these businesses, if we want them to exist, we're going to have to do something for them. And this apartment is one of those things. I feel really strongly about that. And I think just that second story, I mean, they're going to have to get a pyramid. So they're going to still have to go through, the zoning process to get what they want. We're just, I looking at that rendition, I don't think it looks bad at all. I don't think we'll even notice it. But we have to come up with solutions for housing. And I think.
Even if it's staff housing?
And even if it's staff housing, because it's still, the staff house, somehow they need to function. These businesses need to function. I think we were, when we considered the emergency room, weren't they going to have rooms where they could sleep, whatever, because there's nowhere for anybody to go. So I think overall this is a good project. I agree with everyone. The parking is a disaster there. I guess it's not really your fault. And it's unfortunate that the neighbors will not, let go of a few spaces here and there because it is empty. I mean, that one building to the right is empty. There's 3 cars in there. And I know, the lawyer and Lori Wiltshire's next door. It's an empty. There's 3 cars in a parking spot of 20 spaces. But,
I just want to add to.
But, and unfortunately, I will go to the Carissa's in Sag Harbor before I'll go to that Carissa's because I don't want to go in there. I don't want to deal with the parking. So that's not good for their business. It'd be good for them to try to resolve it because I will not go in there.
It's a ringing endorsement.
I just want to add to the affordable housing comment. Because if they were not there, you're right, they'd be living up island, as they say.
Yeah. And contributing to traffic.
And this little thing I do when I go around and I'm talking to cashiers, I ask them where they live, or some vendor, I ask them where they live. And it's like Moriches, Manorville, they're all coming in.
Yeah.
So you could probably get 6 employees in a 3-bedroom apartment. And that means 6 fewer cars on the road, on the highway.
And hopefully they ride their bicycles because 6 cars is not good.
6 cars is better than no.
Parking is
Listen, I'm all with you guys on affordable housing, even staff housing. So I agree with you. Just remember one thing though. If we allow more businesses, they're going to compete. They're going to add more housing needs because they're gonna have to staff those businesses. And even if they provide the staffing, what's happening is they're taking away housing for existing businesses that require staffing. So you have to look at it that way too.
But at least here, they're gonna do it for them
Well,
right
they're
there
gonna-
on the building and not take up another house, because I'm sure they're renting houses around
Which is
town.
fine. I'm all for staff housing, I'm all for affordable housing. But just remember that when we're allowing these businesses to go up and they need staffing, that puts a greater stress on the need for affordable housing. It doesn't.
It's not a
But they're
net
not increasing,
increase.
but they're not increasing their business here.
No,
They-
this
This is
one-
an
In this
existing,
case,
this is an
this one, in this
existing.
case, they're not.
Yeah,
Take
yeah.
the other one that we heard earlier. They have 2 apartments, right? How many employees are they gonna have there? They have offices, they have a store, so.
They're
if
gonna
they-
rent those out, yeah.
Those are.
It's all gonna be rented
See,
out.
that's what is,
No,
the
but
same
I'm
thing
saying
being
they're adding
affordable
2
staff.
apartments, but how many apartments are they gonna need for the entire staff?
Yeah, it's a
So
net
they're,
loss.
what you're doing is you're creating, yeah, it's a net loss. So yeah, it's great that they're having 2 apartments. And I don't want to get on, we're talking about this one. In this one, you're right. They're not gonna, they're already there. The staff is already there. But if this was going up as a new project.
Yeah.
They're adding employees. Employees need housing. They provide 1 apartment. The net loss is going to be much greater than the gain that we're getting from that one. So you have to look at it that way as well.
Let's let, one last one, and then I want to run through the questions real quick.
I don't know if the applicant's aware, but in the past, there was a restaurant in Carissa's called Smokin' Wolf. And they worked out an agreement with that neighbor for parking.
Which way?
Turtle Cove, right?
It was
Turtle Crossing.
It was off
That's right.
the Wolf's Restaurant. It was Turtle
Yes.
Crossing.
Turtle Crossing.
He's now a couple of doors down.
It may be that that owner does not want to get involved in a application before the board, but after there's approval, there is a history. It's the same owner. There is a history of shared parking there.
Well, you know what? It's going to be a business decision, an operational decision. And I would say that that's out of our purview, and it can't even be part of our calculus.
I think we should make it a condition of the approval.
Oh, great.
Give Nancy something to do.
You want to respond? Yeah, I do want to run through the questions.
Very quickly.
Be done.
Just a couple of the things that were said. Obviously, this is a benefit to the business, right? The business needs to survive. It wants to create better working conditions for its staff. It wants to continue to provide this service to the community. However, we would argue very strongly that this is also a benefit to the community. Yes, the housing is for the staff, but the fact that we can now house staff on our property frees up rentals for the cop or the teacher or whoever it might be that we're having to provide for our staff now in order to get them to work here. So it does free up options for more housing for other people. Secondly, the sewer and the parking, again, as we discussed before, if somebody else comes in here and puts a beauty salon in this thing, they get 300 gallons of flow and they get 8 parking spaces. So right now, we're capping it at 225 for staff housing. So we're getting less flow than somebody else could provide. We're also doubling the parking at the restaurant. The restaurant has 8 spaces right now, and we've all acknowledged it's a nightmare. By doing this, we can get 16. Is it going to fix the problem? No. Is it doubling the existing capacity? Yes, it's going to make a difference. So, and then the only other thing to say, Randy, you had asked earlier about the apartment variance. And to be clear, we spoke with Tom Rule, who I know is retired now, but the 2-bedroom restriction is intended to cap the occupancy at 4 occupants, which is why there's a 2-bedroom restriction. We've asked for 3 bedrooms to provide more privacy for the staff while saying that we will still cap it at 4 occupants. So we're not trying to increase capacity here. We're actually trying to create a better living condition for the staff.
That's great. So we would want to make that a.
Is that a
condition.
covenant?
Yeah, we offered to covenant that.
Yeah, very good. That's great.
That's great.
Okay. All right,
Glad
thank
you
you
told
very
them.
much for that. Yeah, that is,
Who's going to have to bunk up now?
that's also outside of our. Should the applicant remove the conflicting no parking signage? The applicant's already stated that's gonna happen, and we're all grateful for it. Does the planning, all right, this is, I see it's number one. Does the planning board agree the sanitary plan is acceptable?
I'm gonna say yes.
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 Yes, yes, and I'll say yes. And I'm saying yes because it's grandfather. That's, I mean, that's the rule, that's the law. If it fits, it fits. Does the planning board find the lighting acceptable, or should fixture heights be lowered to comply with the policy?
I prefer it to be lowered.
I think it's okay.
I think it's acceptable.
Lowered.
Acceptable.
Lowered. So that's 3-3. Where does that leave us?
Ian.
Ian's recused.
It does not
This is-
pass.
It doesn't pass, so you're gonna have to potchka with that, play with that. Does the planning, last question, does the planning board find the application is complete?
Yes.
Round? Yes, yes.
Yes.
Randy,
Yeah, there was one thing though, I thought Tina put in that was important, which
did I
is,
miss one?
she recommends that the planning board require, the fire marshal
Condition of approval.
condition of a building permit.
The
Before-
apartment.
But that doesn't prevent us from determining that it's complete, does it?
No,
No.
no, but I think that's a very good idea. We can't have an apartment built over a bakery without the fire marshal's
Yes.
approval.
I agree.
So why should we issue a building permit for that before the fire marshal is signed off on?
So does
I
that
agree.
hold up the EAF?
No, I don't think they can get they don't need the approval yet, but I mean, before the building permit, definitely, because we don't want it to be built and then can't be occupied, right? So, and I believe they were already talking to the fire marshal, is my
For
understanding.
months, yes.
So
We're keeping him
it's in motion, but yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't put that in the questions, but yeah,
But it
and
would
that's
be a
important.
condition of approval that okay.
And that's a code thing too. so
We
they
can't
that's
get a
right.
permit
Yeah.
without.
Right, we don't need to make that
Okay.
part of what we're
Okay,
doing.
the building department won't issue a building permit.
No,
So I wasn't sure about that, which is why I said it, but okay, I mean.
I'm not
You're
sure.
not gonna
I'm
issue
not
a
sure
permit
either.
for a fire hazard, so.
No, but if we put in our approval that, it's, that the fire marshal approval must be on record before a CO is issued,
Is that something we
that's
can?
very different. That's what we do condition. So if we say that a building permit cannot issue based on the site plan, not on the building code, based on the site plan, that
Well,
we,
we could put that in the resolution.
Yeah.
Put that-
Yeah.
Make a note.
Okay.
Okay, all right, again, as with the prior EAF, we're not gonna go through all 11 questions, but every one of them is identified as no or small impact may occur. Is there, we've all read the EAF, I trust?
Yes.
Does anyone have anything they wish to question of these 11 points? And in that case, Randy, I think it's the resolutions,
motion for neg deck.
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of negative deck? Any opposed? Passed 6-0 with one recuse. Move them lights.
Thought it was a draw.
One light.
Thank you very much.
One light.
Yeah, really, it's just one that you really. Thank you. Okay. All right, folks, thank you all. Let's go to the regular meeting now, which we should have done the 395 before when we were doing that. So we'll do it. But first, CMP. Lou?
In the matter of the application of CMPSJ lot line modification, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-176-8-22, 23. I've read the extension of time resolution, which extends the time period for 1 year or until August 16, 2023, and I move for its approval.
Is there a second?
But 2023, August 16th.
Yeah, I guess it's 1 year from the prior.
Oh, prior, got it.
That's it. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Pass 7-0. All right, now 395.
395. In matter of the application of 395 Panago Road preliminary subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-189-14. the resolution to schedule a public hearing. The public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, June 7th, 2023 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter, as this matter may be heard, to consider said application.
I don't think we need to read the
Yeah, you
whole
don't
thing.
need to read, just the.
No, it's only at the public
Yeah, it's
hearing.
at the public hearing,
Not
then you'll have
the notice, not the
But the when is enough, right?
Yeah, when and, yeah,
Just
just
the
the when and
resolution.
where. Yeah. So you can just move forward, it's approved.
Because you've read the rest of it, so.
And you've read it and you determined that it's
It's
appropriate.
perfect.
and
It's a work of literature.
All you need to do is say, I move.
I move for the adoption.
Is there-
Schedule a public hearing.
Is there a second?
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Pass 7. Next one is Ed.
Maidstone Acres.
Maidstone.
In the matter of the application of Maidstone Acres 2, site plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-38-4-2.1, scheduled public hearing. A public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter, as this matter may be heard. To consider the said application, I have read this application and call for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass 7. And finally, Ed, also on Inlet Seafood.
In the matter of the application of Inlet Seafood Restaurant Bar and Ice House, site plan special permit, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-6-2-3.1 and 36. Extension of time, we are, based on documents received, we extend the time within which the applicant must comply with the conditions of the board's resolution retroactively in one-year increments within which to obtain a building permit, or until April 18th, 2024. I have read the extension of time application and call for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Pass 7. All right, just before we go, we have no meeting next week. No,
We don't?
No, there would have been a paucity of matters to cover, and you all should, everyone got your opus maximus on the Wayne Scott Commercial Center, right? That's,
I
was that
got
gone?
the emails.
Has
I'm
that
not
gone to the
sure
board?
if it
Has
was
that gone
routed,
out?
actually.
I didn't get it.
Because it didn't make it to the.
I
I
get
saw
things
the email,
sometimes.
it was being postponed.
Yeah, that's the point, but the,
I have to check on that. I'm not sure if it was routed. It's on the website.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was routed, but if it wasn't, I will get it to.
I can go to the
everybody.
website.
the point was, there was thought that we were going to cover it next week, but the applicant can't be here, has asked for more time. We frankly are gonna need more time with it because it's.
Has that been posted, the memo?
It's
Is that what
on.
you're looking?
The comments are on the website where the EIS is. And we'll circulate the PDF to you all.
Is there,
Yeah.
what are your comments though?
So the planning department wrote comments on a substantive review of
Right.
the EIS. And those are now posted on the town's website.
But
So-
did you do comments on the comments? We heard the public hearing.
We did not do comments on the public comments. We did in our memo note some comments where there was a nexus with concerns and comments we were making on the document.
The point is that next week, there isn't going to be a meeting because it would otherwise have been for the purposes of the Wayne Scott Commercial Center. That's not going to, because of the applicant scheduling and now, and, you know, and we as a board have so much to consume. That's going off for a few weeks until the applicant frankly returns and has their own opportunity to
So we have
respond.
something we can start looking at.
But yeah, you can start digging in now. We do have another meeting, on the next 6th to 10th, so the 17th is our next meeting.
Can I just ask that Tina, if she hasn't already, has a conversation with special counsel on, my understanding was that you have to list each comment and a response in the process, but
So Randy, I'm very familiar with that process.
Okay.
My understanding is the same as yours, and we do intend to do that.
okay.
But our first step was the substantive review
I
of the
got it.
draft EIS. But
Okay.
absolutely correct, and that has to occur.
Okay.
You know, we have outside counsel, which is guiding us through this process, because, you know, there's a lot going on, and we don't want to mix anything up and get anything wrong. The only other thing I'd say is, you may or may not have seen an email, I saw Sharon responded to it.
We could do it on Wednesday, since we don't have a meeting here.
No.
I'm just kidding.
What is it? Oh, yeah.
For
Active shooting.
Active shooting. Yes, yes.
Jeez, what a world.
Well, you know,
Is this required that we go to this? We have to go?
Well, they want to
asking
see
us
our
to-
date, our availability. So let's respond to that, and it'll be scheduled. The overall question of, do we have to go or not? And it's one of those deals where I don't know if it's like the continuing education requirements that we
Right.
do have, that we have, with which we must comply. But, you know, it may be a policy that we may need to follow. Do you object to it, or?
Yeah, I do object to it.
On what grounds? I'm just curious.
The larger grounds that we have a gun problem in this country, and why are we, you know, my kids do these in the school. They do these active shooter drills. Why are they doing active shooter drills? When there are, the issue is much bigger than that. So
You
this
know.
is not the forum for
No,
a
this isn't.
conversation.
Very definite
Email
opinion.
it, email it. There's an email out there which answers the email.
So let's let them know about availability, and I guess if you want to say you don't want to do, say that, but I would actually, maybe Nancy can find out first whether or not this is like mandatory, we have to attend.
Yeah, I mean, they had it open to staff and it wasn't mandatory.
It is.
You know, quite a few people showed up and I thought Ann Bell sent around like an email with a link to like the video of it. I'll see if I can find that and forward that to everybody. I didn't look at it myself because I
We
was.
went out to all town.
Take a look at
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah, you guys got that too.
Right now.
I'm sorry, Tina?
It wasn't mandatory for.
Yeah.
Okay, then you may
Yeah,
be.
so
We all have access to that video.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, all I'm telling you is, if you haven't looked at the email, take a look and respond with it.
Sam, just to clear up what you were saying before, are you saying that in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be covering?
No, to be clear, we're not, no.
We're not
It's
sure.
gonna be, the scheduling isn't, for the applicant doesn't, permit
Because I'm
us
not
to do
sure I'm going to be able to make it. I know in person I won't be able to make it on the 17th.
it. Well,
And I'd like to be there, so it's good that it's not going to be on the 17th.
it's going to be a usual meeting, a usual agenda meeting.
Yeah, I may have to be on Zoom. I'm having a foot operation.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be seen in your hospital gown.
Stop
It's
putting,
precedent.
It's precedent.
Lou, stop putting egg in your
All right, I'll make that motion.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.